In 1997, following their Oscar win for writing the screenplay to Good Will Hunting, Matt Damon and Ben Affleck became poster boys for the next generation of up-and-coming movie stars. Through career ups and downs, the two have managed to maintain their fame and stardom, and perhaps most impressively, always remain loyal to each other over their long careers. But where did it all start? On this edition of The Best Movie You Never Saw, we take a look at an underrated and now largely obscure Paramount Pictures drama from 1992 called School Ties, starring the newly resurgent Brendan Fraser.
These kids, they're going to be a little curious about you. I mean, nobody ever comes here for just their last year. It's a very unusual situation. They're a great bunch of kids, don't get me wrong, but they're privileged. They take a lot of things for granted you and I never would. Just play your cards close to the vest. I mean, that's my advice.
Flashback to 1992. Brendan Fraser's career was heating up fast. A year before, he had been a totally obscure young actor showing up in TV movies.
Well, I thought I smelled squid shit.
I smell it. How'd you like to eat my shit?
But then, the movie Encino Man came out, in which Fraser played perhaps the world's most lovable caveman, Link, in this ultra-90s comedy where Sean Astin and Pauly Shore discover a caveman in their backyard, give him a shower, and let him loose on their high school to help them become popular and score with chicks. It wasn't art, but it was funny, and Fraser's winning personality made him an overnight star.
No, whizzing the juice. Where's the juice? No, whizzing the juice. No, whizzing the juice.
This was good news for Paramount Pictures, who had already had another, much more serious Brendan Fraser movie in the can, School Ties. Now, what's interesting is that this movie was actually shot before Encino Man, as the latter was really just a quickie movie that Disney rushed out to capitalize on the success of Wayne's World, which reinvigorated the then dying teen comedy market.
You know how these things start. One guy tells another guy something, and then he tells two friends, and they tell two friends, and so on, and so on, and so on.
School Ties, however, was anything but a teen comedy. In it, Brendan Fraser plays David Green, a Jewish boy in 1959 who gets a football scholarship to an exclusive New England prep school.
You go up there, Davy, and become a gentleman. Not like this riffraff.
No, we ought to be kicking his skinny butt for breaking up the team.
Hey, you want to stay in here?
Initially, the handsome, affable David gets along beautifully with everyone, quickly becoming a big man on campus. But once the boys learn he's a Jew, he's ostracized and bullied.
What's the matter, David? Don't the Jews have a sense of humor? Yeah, it turns out our golden boy here is a lying, backstabbing kite.
They want him out. School Ties had two pretty heavy hitters credited as the screenwriters. One is the last detail author, Daryl Ponixan, and the other is Dick Wolf. Famous for being the man behind the biggest TV franchise of all time, Law & Order. Wolf actually based School Ties on his own experience of being bullied for being Jewish during his school days. Robert Mandel, who made another Best Movie You Never Saw selection, FX, was the director. While definitely Fraser's show all the way, the movie's cast was filled out by a who's who of young actors, many of whom would go on to become household names. In addition to Matt Damon and Ben Affleck, there's also Hauser and Chris O'Donnell.
Hi, meet you. This is Rip Van Kelt, Jack Connors, Charlie Dillon.
How you doing? Hey, we're the big men on campus.
Anthony Rapp was also in the cast, and he would go on to become a Broadway star in Rent. Indeed, in interviews, Damon has fondly remembered the fact that the director, Mandel, promised the boys that they would become the next Brat Pack, which is a fate they actually avoided for the most part, with many of the cast members having enduring careers rather than being flashes in the pan, and for whom School Ties was merely the beginning and not the peak of their careers. Now, as a kid, I watched this movie for Brendan Fraser. As soon as I saw him show up as Link in Encino Man, he became a hero of mine, and I always made it a point to check out his movies. I especially loved how he would show up in cameos in Pauly Shore movies like Son-in-Law and In the Army Now as Link, with a fun little arc being built up where Link went to college and eventually wound up in the army.
Don't eat the chicken. And it tastes just like frog. Okay.
Enjoy.
But it was School Ties that was the movie of his I watched the most. Like Dead Poets Society, there was something about the period prep school setting that appealed to me. Both movies deal with the ugly side of these institutions. Dead Poets Society is about the crushing weight of expectation and groupthink, while School Ties peels back the WASP aspect, depicting in scathing fashion how these patrician schools would treat anyone they deemed to be other. At first, everyone loves Fraser's character. Again, he's tall and good-looking and wins football games. He's always willing to stick up for his friends, and he has a streetwise toughness that makes him a bit of a bad boy. But as soon as they find out he's a Jew, all bets are off. The most venal of the boys is played by Matt Damon. It's ironic he became so famous for playing heroes, as when I was a kid I thought Damon, as his character in the movie, was the biggest piece of shit I'd ever seen.
And in 10 years, nobody's gonna remember any of this. But you'll still be a goddamn Jew.
You'll still be a prick.
It's a tribute to how good of an actor he was even back then, I suppose. His Charlie Dillon becomes best friends with David, and while he's a bit jealous when the girl he likes, played by Amy Lockhane, likes David better, he's okay with it until he realizes David's Jewish. He rallies the other boys into bullying David, even hanging a Nazi flag above his bed. Rapp, Affleck, and Damon are the worst of the bunch, with only good old Chris O'Donnell and Randy Battenkoff remaining Fraser's friend, even if they both seem to have their own prejudice to overcome. Eventually, Damon's snot-nosed Dylan gets sloppy while cheating on an exam, leaving a crib sheet behind. While it's found and the headmaster threatens to fail all the boys, they choose David as their scapegoat.
It's the finding of the class, the majority of the class, that the guilt lies with David Green.
However, Fraser's David knows the truth and does his best to overcome the anti-Semitism amongst his former friends. It's actually pretty powerful stuff, and as a personal aside, it was an important movie for me to watch as a kid. I must admit to being somewhat sheltered as a child, and being a good Catholic boy, this was an important film for me to watch as it opened my eyes to the fact that there was a lot of anti-Semitism around me growing up that I wasn't even conscious of. School Ties is definitely a message movie, and nowadays many will say it's old-fashioned, simple, and safe, but it reminds me of another film of that era, Swing Kids, which shined a light on the rise of the Third Reich in Nazi Germany through the trappings of a teen flick. People may scoff at these films now, but they were message movies aimed at a young audience that, to their credit, had enough grit to them to show things the way they were. That made them very effective, at least to me anyway, and I'm willing to bet a lot of other children of my generation learned some important lessons watching these movies. All that aside, School Ties is worth watching for a lot of different reasons, but the biggest is the chance to see Fraser and Damon at the beginning of their careers and to know just how good both were right from the get-go. Much is being made of Fraser's deserved comeback, but I find the coverage of The Whale too many people are dismissing his earlier films. Another movie of Brendan Fraser's that I really like is called Airheads, in which he plays a metalhead rocker opposite Steve Buscemi and Adam Sandler. So if you wonder why Steve Buscemi keeps showing up in Adam Sandler movies, it's because of this movie. Clearly they became really good friends while they were doing it, and you know what? It's a lot of fun. Chris Farley shows up at one point, rips out a guy's nipple ring. It's a pretty fun little flick.
I figure, I'm screwed up and average enough that I could write a song that'll live on forever. And then after that, it don't matter.
Another film of his that, of course, is terrific is Gods and Monsters, opposite Ian McKellen as Frankenstein director James Whale, with Brendan Fraser the object of his affection.
What do you want from me? I want you to kill me.
This one was very well received when it came out, but oddly enough didn't lead to a lot of serious roles for Fraser because it also came out at the same time as The Mummy. Which turned him into a major action star. Another one that I always enjoyed was Blast from the Past, which pairs him with Alicia Silverstone, Christopher Walken. So in this one, he's basically this guy who is put in a bunker by his parents because they think nuclear war is going to happen during the Cuban Missile Crisis. He emerges 30 years later to a very strange world. It is very naive, and it is a terrific performance. And Christopher Walken is pretty much just as funny in this movie as Fraser is. Now, the less said about Monkey Bone, the better. And Bedazzled was kind of lame. However, he was in another really good drama a couple years later called The Quiet American that paired him with Michael Caine and was directed by Philip Noyce. This is another movie that barely anybody saw, but really was a good film. But oddly enough, after that, it seemed like his career kind of went down the tubes. There was Looney Tunes Back in Action, which was a huge flop. And after that, I mean, it seemed like it was just all minor movies, with the only kind of noteworthy films that he would act in afterwards being the third Mummy film, which nobody liked, and Journey to the Center of the Earth, which made money, but I mean, is pretty bad. Anyway, hopefully Fraser is on the verge of one of the greatest comebacks we've ever seen, because you know what? He deserves it.